does my meaningful relationship with God tie to meaningful relationship with people?
That's a great question. How does my meaningful relationship with God tie into my meaningful relationship with people, correct?
Yes.
Intimacy. I think intimacy is what defines relationships. Intimacy is an honesty. It's an openness. It's a transparency. It's a vulnerability. It's communication. There's an openness. There's a respect. Here's my favorite part about intimacy, bro, or what makes it intimacy, or one of the defining aspects of intimacy is it has to be mutual. If it's not mutual, it's no longer intimate. Intimate doesn't mean sexual. Intimate is everything that I just said. You see what I'm saying? But the essence of it is that it's mutual. So it's when both parties come together and they agree to bring all those characteristics to the center. It makes it intimate. So I think that's the bridge, or that's how the two, I guess, serve one another. It's intimacy. And I think one of the things about having a meaningful relationship with God is, or one of the mistakes I find that people make, and even myself, especially my early days, is me and God talked, but our talks weren't intimate. See, me and God might have spent some time together, but it wasn't intimate. And one of the most common mistakes I find that people make when they pray out of repetition, tradition, things that they've practiced or things that they've heard. Prayer is communication. Communication is the lifeline to relationships. But it's what are you saying while you pray? And if you look at the word prayer in the Amplified in the Bible, it always says pray, in parentheses, make your specific request known to God. Or when you're praying, petitioning, giving thanks, or interceding, you get specific. It's when you're specific in your prayers, it's usually where you find intimacy, because you're no longer saying a script, but you're truly just saying what's on your heart, what's on your mind. You're no longer role playing. You're literally going to God with that vulnerability, with that transparency, with that openness. You see, and that's usually what makes your prayer life not only rich but meaningful. Prayer time can go very stale if you keep doing things out of repetition or a script. But if I can go to God vulnerable and transparent, I'm going to probably find myself being very specific. And so ultimately, that's what makes it meaningful, and with people too. If you ever notice, or something that I found is, not a lot of people have meaningful relationships. You would think like that would be the things that we would aim for. But the opposite of meaningful, let's just say it's surface. Most people have surface relationships. Honestly, my motivation to have meaningful relationships was watching some people older than me have a lot of surface relationships, and I watched them grow old and then have no friends, have no one to talk to, have no one to call on. They end up usually lonely or alone. And I said, I'm good. I need some people in my life that know me. I don't want to live a life where, no one really got to know me. And most people are used to giving people just enough to feel like they know each other. But they don't really never know each other. And this is what I found, no funny. When you're going through something, bro, when you're going through a trial, tribulation, or any situation that may seem hard, maybe feel like it's crushing you, maybe feel like, it's extremely painful. Sometimes when you have people you love going, or when you have people that you love with you while you go through it, it's better than being alone going through it. And I've always told people that, I say, imagine you having to go through this situation alone. But this is what I found, bro. You could walk into a room full of people and still feel alone. You could be friends with a lot of people and still feel alone. And I think what's worse than being alone in a trial or a hard situation or a painful season is when everybody around you thinks you're okay and you're not. When everybody around you thinks everything is cool with you, but it's not. It's at that moment when you realize no one really knows you. That hurts more than the situation itself. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you have to humble yourself and realize it's not even their fault. Because they're only perceiving you as the person you've portrayed. And so most people usually probably portray that, oh, I'm good. Everything's cool with me. In the name of, I don't want to get too vulnerable. Oh, I'm cool. Oh, that's cool. No, I'm good. In the name of not being transparent. Or maybe someone told them, don't ask nobody for help. Or, just keep going through life, maybe saying, I'm good, everything gonna be okay. Or you don't want to feel like a burden. You don't want to feel needy. Whatever the case may be. It's at that moment you see my relationships aren't meaningful. Very surface, very shallow. A friend is born in times of adversity. But if I have no one around me in my times of adversity, I first have to check myself. You know what I'm saying? Have I given people access to me? Have I been open? Have I been vulnerable? Have I been transparent? Have I spoke up? Or have I portrayed that I'm Superman? Have I portrayed that I'm always good? I'm blessed. I'm highly favored. Have I portrayed this, I don't want no one to know, maybe I'm low on funds? Am I trying to keep up this image? Am I afraid of intimacy? Am I afraid of commitment? Am I afraid of getting too close to people? Do I have trust issues? These are real things that not only are real, but ultimately is what keeps people in surface relationships. Because if I don't get too close, I won't get hurt. And that you can't live like that. And see, the Bible calls us to guard our hearts. We test people by their fruit, by the evidence, what they show us, not what they say. But ultimately, there is a place in your life where you have to recognize you need meaningful relationships. You can't do life alone. We weren't born to do life alone. And see, meaningful relationships is so important to me because ultimately, one, we need a meaningful relationship with God. This is not the time for anyone to be going to God out of role playing or from a script. It's time to just get before God vulnerable, transparent, as if he was really your friend, as he really is your God, your Father. It's no time to be sugarcoating anything. He knows your thoughts anyway. He knows what you're going to say anyway. You have to give him access. And you have to have that openness, that vulnerability, that transparency to even God sometimes say, God, I'm not okay. And it's okay. But I found that as you give God access, he can speak to things. He can begin to validate and affirm places of your life that you didn't even think he cared about. Same thing with people. As you assess if this person is qualified for your access, you can begin to make investments into them with vulnerability and transparency, being honest, being open, and looking for that mutual aspect as well. Because there are people that, again, are in surface relationships, but one side may be very open, but you keep that wall up just to protect yourself, and ultimately you end up alone. So meaningful relationships is very critical.